Have you ever noticed something strange about the most disciplined people in the world? They don't talk about motivation. They don't wait to feel inspired. And they don't ask themselves whether today is the right day to begin. While most people wake up negotiating with themselves, promising to start tomorrow, or when they feel ready, or when the timing feels right, these people simply show up. Not because they feel strong or confident, but because there is no debate left inside them. Centuries ago in Japan, there lived a man named Akira no Ren. He possessed knowledge, plans, and a clear vision of the man he wanted to become. He understood discipline in theory and honor in words. Yet every morning he hesitated. He studied more, prepared more, and delayed action once again. Every night, he went to sleep unchanged, carrying knowledge that never became life. This is not a story about motivation. Motivation is a feeling, and feelings disappear as easily as they arise. This is a story about something far older and far quieter, something that does not negotiate with comfort, fear, or mood. The Japanese once had a word for this force, Yamato Damashii. It is not the spirit of war, nor a call to aggression. It is the spirit that moves the body forward even when the mind begs to stop. It is the quiet discipline that remains when excitement fades and excuses lose their power. If you are someone who knows exactly what to do, yet somehow never does it, then this story is not meant to entertain you. It is meant to reflect you back to yourself. And if you value stories like this, stories that do not shout, do not hype, but slowly reshape how you think and live, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. Not for motivation, but for reminders of who you are meant to become. Now, let us begin. Most people believe their problem is a lack of motivation. They think that if they could just feel inspired, just a little more excited, everything would finally change. They search for the right video, the right speech, the right moment that will light a fire inside them. And when that fire fades, as it always does, they believe something is wrong with them. But motivation was never meant to last. It is a feeling, and like all feelings, it obeys no command. It comes when it wants, stays for a moment, and disappears without explanation. To build your life on motivation is to build a house on the wind. Some days it carries you forward. Most days, it leaves you standing still. This is why those who rely on motivation move in cycles. One day they are energized, planning boldly, promising change. The next day they are tired, distracted, uncertain. Soon comes guilt, then self-blame, and finally the search for motivation begins again. Not to act, but to feel better about not acting. This cycle does not destroy dreams loudly. It erodes them quietly, day by day. The disciplined do not live in this cycle. Not because they are stronger, but because they play a different game. They do not ask themselves how they feel before they act. They do not wait for desire to give permission. Action comes first. Feeling follows, if it comes at all. Akira no Ren once believed motivation was necessary. He thought he needed the right mental state before he could begin training. Each morning, he waited for confidence. Each afternoon, he waited for clarity. Each night, he told himself tomorrow would be different. But tomorrow always arrived exactly the same. What Akira did not yet understand was simple and brutal. Waiting to feel ready is a form of avoidance. It feels responsible. It feels intelligent. But in truth, it is fear wearing the mask of preparation. Motivation says, act when you feel good. Discipline says, act because this is who you are. One is a suggestion, the other is an order. And this is where the old path begins to reveal itself. Akira no Ren was admired for his mind. From a young age, he absorbed knowledge the way dry earth absorbs rain. He read the classics, memorized strategies, and studied the writings of generals and philosophers late into the night. While others trained their bodies, Akira trained his thoughts. He believed that mastery began in the mind, and that action without perfect understanding was reckless. In theory, he was right. Knowledge matters, understanding matters, but somewhere along the way, knowledge became his refuge. Each time action approached, Akira found another reason to delay, another book to read, another concept to clarify, another technique to fully understand before beginning. Preparation felt productive, and because it felt productive, he never questioned it. Every morning, Akira woke with intention. Today would be different. Today he would finally begin his training. He would pick up the sword, feel its weight, and let effort replace thought. But as the day unfolded, hesitation crept in quietly. A doubt here, a question there. By evening, the sword remained untouched, and the books were open once more. No one accused Akira openly. But silence can be sharper than criticism. Servants whispered. Peers smiled politely. Deep down, everyone knew the truth that Akira himself avoided. He was becoming a man who knew how life should be lived, but never lived it. Knowledge gave him comfort, but it also gave him distance. As long as he was learning, he could postpone becoming. As long as he was preparing, he could avoid failing. And as long as he avoided failing, he could tell himself he was still on the path. But time does not reward intention. Days passed. Seasons change. Akira remained the same. One evening, his father watched him close another book and said nothing at first. Then, without anger or disappointment, he spoke words that cut deeper than any insult. "You have the mind of a leader," he said, "but the heart of an observer. Knowledge without action is weight without movement. It burdens you, but it takes you nowhere." That night, Akira did not sleep, not because he was offended, but because the words were true. For the first time, he saw himself clearly, not as the man he wanted to be, but as the man he had chosen to remain. Safe, untested, untouched by discomfort. Before dawn, Akira made a decision that did not come from excitement or inspiration. He closed his books, he left his home, and without knowing where the path would lead, he stepped into the forest, carrying nothing but the quiet realization that knowing was no longer enough. This was the moment before change. Not the transformation itself, but the end of illusion. Akira no Ren walked without direction. He did not carry a plan, nor did he seek one. The forest was quiet in the early morning, the air cold enough to sharpen his breath. For the first time in years, there was no book in his hands and no theory in his mind. Only the weight of his own doubt followed him. Then he heard it. A steady sound cut through the silence, wood striking wood. Again and again, with perfect rhythm, not hurried, not forceful, relentless. Akira followed the sound until he reached a small clearing hidden between tall trees. There, an older man stood alone, holding a wooden sword. His movements were simple, almost plain, the same stance, the same cut, repeated without variation, without pause. There was no expression on the man's face, no strain, no pride, only motion, pure, continuous motion, as if the body had forgotten how to stop. Akira watched for a long time. Minutes passed, perhaps longer. The man did not notice him, or if he did not acknowledge his presence. When the training finally ceased, the man rested the wooden sword against his shoulder and stood still, breathing slowly, as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. Akira stepped forward and bowed. "Teach me," he said, his voice carrying both respect and urgency. "I have studied strategy and technique. I understand the way of discipline. I learn quickly." The man looked at him for the first time. His eyes were calm, but empty of invitation. He took in Akira's fine clothing, his unmarked hands, his posture, clean, untested, untouched by effort. "No," the man replied, and turned away. The word struck harder than anger would have. Akira felt heat rise in his chest. "Wait," he said, stepping closer. "I know the principles. I know what must be done." The man stopped but did not turn. "Then do it," he said quietly, and began to walk again. Something inside Akira shifted. Shame surfaced, followed by desperation. "I don't want to remain as I am," he said. "I need to change." The man paused. This time, he turned fully. He studied Akira in silence, as if weighing something that could not be spoken. Finally, he said, "You will give up." "I won't," Akira answered without thinking. "Everyone says that," the man replied. "Words are easy." Then he pointed back toward the clearing. "Come here tomorrow, before sunrise. If you arrive, I will consider teaching you. If you do not, never return." Akira bowed deeply. "I will be here." The man almost smiled. Almost. As Akira left the forest, doubt followed him closely. He felt the familiar pull of comfort, of delay, of tomorrow. But beneath it all, something new had begun to form, not excitement, not motivation, but a quiet pressure, a weight, a demand. Tomorrow would not ask how he felt. Tomorrow would simply reveal who he was. Akira no Ren did not sleep that night. Each time he closed his eyes, the man's voice returned to him, calm and certain. You will give up. The words did not sound like a threat. They sounded like a fact. And it was that certainty, more than fear or excitement, that kept him awake until the sky began to pale. He arrived at the clearing before dawn. The ground was cold beneath his feet, damp with morning mist. He stood alone, listening to the forest breathe, wondering if he had misunderstood, if this was another test meant to send him back home. Then, without warning, the man appeared. There was no sound of footsteps, no greeting. He was simply there. You came, the man said. It was not praise. It was an observation. Akira bowed. I said I would. Words. The man replied. Today I will see if you have anything else. He handed Akira a wooden sword and pointed to the ground. Stand. The position was simple. Knees bent, back straight, arms extended. The sword held steady. Nothing impressive, nothing complex. Akira almost felt relieved. After all his studying, this seemed trivial. How long? Akira asked. Until I tell you to stop. Minutes passed, then more. The simplicity disappeared quickly. His legs began to shake. His shoulders tightened. Sweat formed along his spine despite the cold air. Every instinct urged him to adjust, to shift his weight, to relieve the pressure building inside his body. He opened his mouth to speak. Silence, the man said without turning. He sat on a rock nearby, watching without expression. Your mind wants to negotiate. Do not listen to it. Akira clenched his jaw. Pain spread upward from his legs like fire. His breath became shallow. His thoughts raced. This is pointless. I understand discipline. I've proven enough. Surely this is sufficient. The man spoke again, his voice steady. Your mind is lying to you. It always lies when discomfort appears. When the man finally told him to stop, Akira collapsed forward. His legs barely held him upright. He waited for approval, for acknowledgement, for some sign that he had done well. Instead, the man stood and looked down at him. That was 15 minutes, he said, and already you wanted to quit. Do you think life waits for your comfort? Do you think difficulty announces itself politely? Akira lowered his head. Shame burned deeper than pain. Go home, the man said. You don't have what it takes. For a moment, Akira believed him. His body screamed in agreement. Leaving would have been easy, logical, justified. But something inside him resisted, not loudly, not bravely, but stubbornly. No, Akira said, forcing himself upright. His legs trembled beneath him. I will do it again. The man studied him for a long moment. Why? He asked. Akira searched for an answer. Pride? Anger? Fear of humiliation? All of them surfaced, then faded. None felt solid enough to stand on. I don't know, Akira admitted. The man nodded. That is why you will struggle. You still think action comes from feeling. Feeling fades. He turned to leave, then stopped. Come back tomorrow, he said, not because you want to. Come back because you must. As the man disappeared into the trees, Akira remained standing in the clearing, shaking, exhausted, and silent. For the first time, he understood that training was not meant to build strength. It was meant to strip away illusion. The path had begun, not with confidence, but with surrender to something far heavier than motivation. Akira no Ren returned the next morning, not because he wanted to, but because leaving felt heavier than staying. His body ached from the day before, every step a reminder of weakness exposed. When he reached the clearing, the man was already there, waiting as if he had never left. You came back, the man said. Akira nodded. There was no pride in it, only acceptance. Today, the man continued, you will learn the difference between acting when it feels right and acting because it is required. He turned and walked deeper into the forest. Follow. They reached a river swollen with cold, fast-moving water. Mist hovered above its surface, and the sound of it rushing over stone filled the air. The man pointed to a rock near the center, slick and barely above the current. Stand there, he said. Hold your stance until I tell you to leave. Akira stared at the water. The cold was visible, almost alive. How long? He asked. Until you understand. He stepped into the river. The shock stole his breath. The water bit into his legs like knives, forcing a gasp from his lungs. He climbed onto the rock, slipped, steadied himself, and assumed the stance. The current pressed against him without mercy. Minutes passed. His legs shook uncontrollably. The cold crept upward, numbing his feet, then his calves, then his thoughts. Panic rose. Every instinct screamed the same command: get out. Master, Akira shouted, I can't endure this. The man stood on the shore, unmoving. Your ancestors endured worse, he replied. They stood in rain and blood. They marched wounded, and you were defeated by cold water? Why? Akira cried. Why must I do this? The man's voice cut through the river's roar. Because it is your duty. You asked to change. That was not a wish. It was a declaration. Akira closed his eyes. Tears mixed with river water and ran down his face. For a moment, he considered stepping off the rock and ending the pain. No one would stop him. No one would judge him. Then something shifted. He stopped fighting the cold. He stopped arguing with it. The pain did not vanish. But the struggle did. He accepted where he was, not as punishment, but as responsibility. I am here because I chose to be. He told himself. I remain because I must. Time passed without meaning. When the man finally spoke again, Akira barely heard him. Get out. Akira stumbled to the shore, his body barely responding. The man led him to a small fire already prepared. As warmth returned slowly, the man spoke. For the first part, you fought the discomfort, he said. That exhausted you. Then you accepted it, not because it felt good, but because you stopped negotiating. That is the lesson. He added another log to the fire. This is Yamato Damashii, not the absence of feeling, but the refusal to let feeling decide. Duty does not ask how you feel. It asks only whether you will remain. Akira stared into the flames, shivering, silent, changed. He understood now that strength was not resistance. It was acceptance without retreat. The river had not hardened him. It had revealed him. The following morning, Akira no Ren arrived at the clearing before the sun rose. His body was weaker than it had been days before, marked by soreness and fatigue. Yet something inside him felt heavier and more stable. The man noticed this immediately. There was no approval in his eyes, only recognition. Yesterday, the man said, you returned because you endured pain. Today, you will learn why endurance alone is not enough. He did not hand Akira the wooden sword. Instead, he motioned for him to sit. This surprised Akira more than any physical trial. He had come prepared to suffer again, to prove something through effort. Do you believe discipline is about doing difficult things? The man asked. Akira considered the question carefully. I thought it was, he replied. It is not, the man said calmly. Discipline is not action. Discipline is identity. He drew a line in the dirt between them. When you say, I should train, there is distance between who you are and who you wish to be. That distance invites negotiation. It allows excuses. It allows delay. The man erased the line with his foot. But when you say, I am a warrior, there is no distance. Warriors train. They do not debate it. They do not ask permission from their feelings. Training is not a decision. It is a consequence of who they are. Akira felt something tighten in his chest. He realized that all his life, he had lived in that distance. He had called himself a scholar who wanted to be disciplined, a thinker who hoped to act one day. That space had given him endless room to hesitate. Yamato Damashii, the man continued, is not about forcing yourself to act. Forcing creates resistance. Resistance creates exhaustion. Yamato Damashii is about becoming someone for whom action is unavoidable. He looked directly at Akira. You studied like a man who wished to be a warrior. You must become a warrior who studies. The difference struck Akira with unsettling clarity. One identity waited, the other moved. From this day, the man said, standing, you will no longer ask whether you will train. That question no longer exists. You have already answered it by deciding who you are. Akira rose to his feet. For the first time, the thought of training did not feel heavy or dramatic. It felt ordinary, necessary, like breathing. In that moment, Akira understood something deeper than any lesson of pain. Action was never the real battle. The real battle was deciding, once and for all, who he would no longer allow himself to be. And with that decision, the noise inside him began to fade. The path of Yamato Damashii was no longer something he followed. It was something he had become. Weeks passed, and Akira no Ren changed in ways that were difficult to see from the outside. His stance grew steadier. His breath grew quieter. Pain no longer surprised him. It arrived as expected. Like an old companion. Yet the most dangerous test did not come from hardship. It came from comfort. One evening, word reached him of a gathering in the city. Music, laughter, warm food, familiar faces. Men he once studied beside would be there. Speaking of ideas, sharing wine, celebrating life untouched by discipline. For the first time since he began training, Akira felt a pull backward, not toward weakness, but toward ease. One night will change nothing. He told himself, I have been consistent, I have earned rest. That thought felt reasonable. That was what made it dangerous. The next morning, the clearing remained empty. The man arrived before sunrise. As always, and waited. The sun rose fully. Akira did not come. When Akira awoke later that day, comfort quickly turned to weight. Guilt settled in his chest. Heavy and undeniable, he returned to the clearing the following morning. Prepared for anger, for dismissal, for judgment. The man was already there. He did not shout. He did not scold. He simply looked at Akira with something far worse than disappointment, sadness. You chose comfort over duty. The man said quietly. Not because you were forced. Because you decided. Akira lowered his head. It was a mistake. No, the man replied. It was a choice. And choices reveal identity. Silence stretched between them. Akira felt the truth of those words settle deeply. He had not broken a rule. He had betrayed a declaration. Tell me, the man said at last. What is Yamato Damashii? Akira took a breath. It is doing what must be done, even when I don't want to. That is the surface, the man said. Go deeper. Akira closed his eyes. Images returned, the river, the stance, the silence. Then understanding arrived, quiet but firm. It is not what I do. He said slowly. It is who I am. When I abandon it, I am not breaking discipline. I am abandoning myself. The man studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded. Now you will learn consequence. That day, Akira held the stance longer than he ever had before. No relief, no mercy. Every second burned. Every thought screamed for escape. When his legs finally gave way, the man spoke once more. This pain was chosen yesterday. He said, when duty is delayed, the cost does not disappear. It waits. As Akira lay on the ground, shaking, a final illusion shattered. The problem had never been effort. The problem had been negotiation. Comfort had always demanded a price, and that price was paid in identity. When Akira rose again, something within him had hardened, not into cruelty, but into clarity. He understood now that the true enemy was not fatigue, nor temptation, nor pain. It was the belief that duty could ever be postponed without consequence. And from that day forward, Akira stopped bargaining with himself. The path continued, not gently, but honestly. From that day forward, something fundamental shifted within Akira no Ren. The training did not suddenly become easier. His body still ached, his muscles still trembled, the cold still cut, and fatigue still arrived each morning without invitation. But one thing disappeared completely, the question of whether he would continue. There was no longer a decision to be made. Each morning before sunrise, Akira rose, not with excitement, not with resistance. He rose because that was what he did now. The act of training no longer felt heroic or dramatic. It felt ordinary, necessary, like drawing breath. The man watched this change in silence. He did not praise it. He did not interfere. He understood that something far more important than strength was forming. Akira had stopped negotiating with himself. He no longer tried to motivate action with emotion. Action had become the default state. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Akira no longer counted them. Time lost its meaning when repetition became identity. The stance grew deeper. The movements grew quieter. His mind, once crowded with thoughts and plans, became still during effort. There was only posture, breath, and presence. One morning, Akira woke with fever. His body was heavy, his thoughts slow, his strength clearly diminished. The old voice returned, soft and familiar. Rest today. You have earned it. He stood anyway. Not out of stubbornness, not to prove anything. He simply stood because not standing felt wrong. The clearing was empty when he arrived, but the man soon appeared and immediately saw his condition. You are sick, the man said. Yes, Akira replied. Then why are you here? Akira answered without hesitation, because this is who I am. For the first time, the man smiled, not briefly, not faintly, but with unmistakable pride. He stepped forward and placed a hand on Akira's shoulder. Go home, he said gently. Rest today. You have already demonstrated what needed to be proven. Akira obeyed without guilt. Rest no longer felt like escape. It felt like strategy. He understood now the difference between avoiding duty and serving it wisely. The transformation was complete, not because Akira had become stronger, but because he had become unshakable. Action no longer depended on desire. Discipline no longer required effort. Identity carried him forward where motivation once failed. The man spoke one final truth before turning away. Yamato Damashii is not strength of body. He said, it is strength of being. When action is no longer a choice, you are free. As Akira walked home that day, he realized something quietly profound. The man he used to be, the one who planned endlessly and waited to feel ready, no longer existed. He had not been defeated in a single moment, but dissolved through daily obedience to duty. And in his place stood someone new. Someone who did not ask. Someone who simply acted. On the final morning of the season, the man asked Akira no Ren to sit beside him beneath the trees. The air was still. Training did not begin. Instead, silence settled between them, the kind that signals an ending rather than a pause. You believe you understand Yamato Damashii now, the man said. Before you leave this place, you must understand what it is not. He explained that Yamato Damashii was never meant to glorify suffering for its own sake. Pain was not the goal. Endurance was not virtue by itself. Blind repetition without understanding was not discipline. Those were shadows, forms that looked strong but led nowhere. Yamato Damashii, the man continued, is the spirit that completes knowledge. It takes what you know and gives it weight. It turns intention into movement, theory into practice. Without it, learning remains sterile, accurate, impressive, and useless. Akira listened, recognizing his former self in every word. He had once believed that accumulating understanding would eventually push him into action. He now saw the flaw in that belief. Knowledge does not move the body. Identity does. There was a time, the man said, when our people studied foreign wisdom deeply, strategy, philosophy, governance. It was valuable, necessary, but something was missing. Men could explain courage without ever testing it. They could speak of leadership without ever deciding. Yamato Damashii was the answer to that imbalance. He looked directly at Akira. It does not reject knowledge. It demands that knowledge be lived. Akira felt the truth settle inside him. Yamato Damashii was not intensity. It was consistency. It was not obsession. It was alignment. When action flowed from identity, discipline stopped feeling like force and began to feel like honesty. Remember this, the man said quietly. If you ever find yourself forcing discipline, you have already lost it. True discipline does not push. It pulls, because you cannot act against who you are. The forest remained silent as the lesson ended. There was nothing more to add. Akira understood now that Yamato Damashii was not a technique he could practice when convenient. It was a way of standing in the world, a refusal to separate thought from action. As they rose to leave, the man spoke once more. Go, he said, do not teach with words alone. Teach by example. Let others see what it means when knowledge is no longer trapped in the mind. Akira bowed deeply, not in gratitude, but in recognition. The teaching was complete. What remained was living it. 90 days had passed. Not marked by celebration, not announced by ceremony. The change in Akira no Ren did not arrive with noise. It arrived quietly, like the shifting of seasons. His body bore the signs: calloused hands, hardened legs, a posture that no longer collapsed under strain, but those were only surface changes. The real transformation was invisible. On the final day, the man led Akira beyond the clearing, into an open field where the trees gave way to space and wind. Waiting there were other men, armed, disciplined, alert, warriors, real ones, not students of theory, but men shaped by action. These men need a leader, the man said, someone who understands strategy, but more importantly, someone who can execute. Akira felt a tightening in his chest. I don't know if I am ready, he said honestly. The man nodded. No one ever is. Readiness is a feeling. Warriors do not wait for it. He turned to Akira, his voice lower now. Everything you have learned here was not about training. It was about death. Akira listened without speaking. The man you were when you arrived, the one who knew everything and did nothing, he had to die. Each morning you chose duty over comfort. You killed him, slowly, quietly, without drama. The man placed a hand on Akira's shoulder. And each day, something else was born. Akira understood. Yamato Damashii had never been about becoming stronger. It had been about becoming someone else. Someone who did not negotiate. Someone who acted not because he was pushed, but because action was inevitable. You will teach these men, the man said. Not through lectures, not through books, though your knowledge is valuable. You will teach them through example, through identity, through presence. Akira looked at the warriors before him. He felt no excitement, no fear, only responsibility. As the man turned away for the last time, he spoke one final sentence. Remember this, Akira no Ren, knowledge without spirit is dead. Yamato Damashii is the soul that gives it life. Akira stepped forward. He did not feel ready. He did not wait. He simply acted. Akira no Ren's story does not end with victory, titles, or praise. Those things may come or may never come. They were never the point. The real ending happened much earlier. In moments no one else could see, when he stood in the cold without applause. When he returned without desire. When he acted without asking how he felt. That is where Yamato Damashii lives. Not in history. Not in words. But in the quiet decisions you make when no one is watching. Most people wait their entire lives to feel ready. They wait for motivation to arrive. For confidence to appear. For fear to disappear. And while they wait, their lives pass unchanged. Knowledge accumulates. Plans multiply. But action never comes. Yamato Damashii offers a different path. It asks you to decide once who you are, and then live as that person without negotiation. Not perfectly, not heroically, but consistently, when it is inconvenient, when it is uncomfortable, when it would be easier to stop. You do not need more motivation. Motivation is fuel that runs out. You need an identity that does not depend on feeling. An inner command that remains when excitement fades. If there is something in your life you already know you must do, train, study, build, change, then the question is no longer how or when. The only question that matters is who. Because once that is answered, action becomes inevitable. If this story resonated with you, if it reflected something you have felt but could not name, then stay with this channel. Subscribe, not for hype, not for motivation, but for reminders of discipline, presence, and the quiet strength that comes from living in alignment with who you choose to be. Return here when the noise grows loud. Return when excuses sound convincing. Return when you feel the urge to negotiate with yourself. And remember, knowledge without action is dead. Action without identity is fragile. But identity lived through duty, that is unshakable. The path is open. Now walk it.